Hello, everyone. I'm Stephanie Boozer with CUGC HQ. Welcome to today's Connect webinar with Flexxible IT. Before we jump in, I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping details for you. We are recording today's presentation, and you'll get a link to that recording tomorrow. It's going to come to you in an email from GoToWebinar, so be on the lookout for that. Also, as we go along, we want you to submit your questions throughout the presentation. We'll get to as many as we can today. I know that we want to keep it kind of interactive, so please do type your questions in as you have them, and we'll get to those. All right, so with us today, we have Adam Cooperman from Flexxible IT. Hello, Adam.
Hi guys, how's it going?
And we also have Bart Jacobs. He is a CTP and he's here to help with the Q&A. So he's going to keep an eye on all of your questions for us. Hello, Bart. All right, well, Adam, I'm going to send everything right over to you. Let me give you back the screen. Okay, I think I'm sending, there's two of you, so I want to make sure I send it to the right Adam in there.
All right, I will share my screen. Cool, let's show. Sorry, 1 second. Yeah, can everyone see that?
No, it went away. Oh, there it is. Well, it's still in the other mode.
Yeah, that's fine. I can fix that nice and easy. Okay, brilliant.
Got it.
Cool. On it, there we go. Sorted. So hi everybody. My name is Adam Cooperman. I work for Flexxible IT. Has that just disappeared, or is that just? Can everyone still see the presentation?
Yeah, it's still there.
Okay, perfect. No worries. My name is Adam Cooperman and I work for Flexxible IT. And today I'm going to be talking about how we use automation to make enterprise agility a reality. So a little bit about Flexxible IT before we dive into the presentation. We originally started about 15, 17 years ago or something like that as a desktop as a service company working with SMB organizations. So we worked with small to medium business. And it would be 50 desktops here or 100 desktops here or something like that. Over time, we then evolved that automation into a product set. That product set was there and it worked as a hyper-converged appliance, which enabled customers to be able to deploy a Citrix environment very, very quickly by using a next wizard that would be enterprise ready and easy to scale. Over time, we then added things like application lifecycle management tools and digital experience management tools to try and create a single unified framework for managing desktops anywhere in the globe, regardless of what cloud they're on, what hardware platform they're on, and we also extend all of our tools out to physical devices as well. So the goal for us is to be a unified operational framework for end user computing. Towards the end of last year, we released the Flex Desktop product portfolio, which I'll be touching on today. But today I want to really focus in on a few key points around how we got to the state of play today. So I want to talk a little bit about the rise of hybrid cloud and kind of how we got here. I'm going to touch on kind of the current state of play because I think there's some interesting pieces around how the world hasn't quite caught up from a legal and governance and management standpoint with the way that people want to work in the modern world. So workers want to work from everywhere, but in actual fact, the things like the policies haven't caught up. Employers, 2/3 of employers don't trust their staff at home. There's been various scandals with people using very intrusive tools to manage their users' productivity. And to have a quick conversation around that, and as I said, please do chip in with any questions. I also want to talk about assessing operational maturity. So whenever a service is generally launched, it's generally an immature service and it takes time to mature. And I think over time, what's happening is people are starting to get to a stage where these remote working strategies were put in, a lot of them for COVID-19 and scaled certainly for COVID-19. We now live in a remote working and home working world. and how far have we come along that maturity journey to get to where we need to be. Another thing that I want to talk about is quantifying waste. So nobody ever sets out to design a bad environment or to create a bad environment for their customers or their clients. But what often happens is people respond to changes very quickly due to a requirement from the business or a request from their boss and something like that. And it can lead to environments when you look at them afresh from an outside set of eyes that actually have inherent waste in the way they're built. So I want to talk very quickly on how we can quantify waste, and how you can use these techniques to start looking at where and how much automation might be able to help in your organization and where standardization might be able to help. Finally, at the very end, I'm going to go into a little bit about our product, the way that we build our unified framework for managing end user computing, the different tools that we bring to the table, and how those fit together to provide what we believe is the best possible management framework for end user computing and VDI. So, the rise of hybrid cloud. Now, one of the things that we really saw is digital transformation, and I worked for Citrix over COVID. I'm ex-Citrix. I was a systems engineer, and then I was on the sales team after that. I was heavily involved with the security teams and the business value engineering teams at Citrix as well. And over COVID, we saw every single remote working policy that had been an on-the-shelf decision because people weren't happy about it suddenly get approved or put forward. And we kind of joke about this a little bit, but I mean, who really drove your digital transformation? And is it kind of the CISO, the CIO, the CEO, or is it COVID-19? And what we really found was, for the most part, it was the requirement to remote work that pushed people into the environments that they have today. And a lot of the time, those environments are cloud. And cloud is phenomenal for scalability. It's phenomenal for flexibility and the ability to be able to change and to adopt new features. But it is not the cheapest option for a stable workforce. And I don't think a lot of the time when people went into cloud and when they took those decisions, they didn't think they'd be there forever. And what I find interesting is when you write a change control or a risk assessment or something like that. I mean, I was a solution architect for quite a long time. You have a backup plan. You have a plan for how you're going to get out of that environment. When COVID happened and everyone went remote working, everything went out the window because governance was less important than operation, than being able to operate. And one of the things that I've seen recently, which is interesting, is when Microsoft started pushing people towards Azure, we saw that they'd extended the life. We now see that they've extended the life of cloud servers from 4 to 6 years. We've also seen articles coming up about cloud prices to surge in US and Europe. I was at AVD Tech Fest a couple of months ago in Amsterdam, and my prediction was up to 50% over the next 18 months. That particular article from the Register, the world's premier source of IT news, suggested that cloud prices are likely to surge anywhere up to 30%. At the moment, we have a lot of external factors that are affecting the way that people work. We are seeing cost of living increases. We are seeing people moving away from cities because they don't need to live in the city anymore, because they don't need to be in the office every day. We're seeing increased gas and heating prices and things like that. And that leads to a world where people would often want to be able to work flexibly rather than have to be in a single location. And I think for the current state of play, we've ended up in a world at the moment where the strategy and the tools and the governance, and to an extent globalization, are not ready for the way that people want to work and people want to operate. We see that users want to work from anywhere, but 2/3 of employers don't trust their staff. We have no measurement in any way, shape, or form for an employee's productivity. Really, it's very difficult to measure an employee's productivity, and I often preach to my team. One of the guys on my team is working from Lisbon. He was like, well, do you mind if I go to Lisbon and work from Lisbon for a week? I'm like, of course I don't. It's absolutely fine. I said, but you work in a UK time zone. That's the only thing that matters to me. Now, I have a good deal of trust with that individual, but when you get to scale, it can be quite difficult to do that. It can be quite difficult to work out how you quantify an employee's throughput. Now, I personally, I'm far more productive working from home, but it's difficult to quantify and difficult to see what people are doing. And if people can't see it, they're not sure about it. The other thing that we've seen is cost control. So the rush to cloud gave people what they need, but we're now hearing stories about repatriation and things like that, because the fact is the cloud has a million benefits, but it is expensive. And the management tools that have happened is very, very few organizations have actually managed to remove their dependence on physical data centers, meaning that what they've now got is maybe a VMware environment that's running some virtual machines or a Nutanix environment. They then have a small footprint in Azure. They maybe have a footprint in AWS. They maybe have a colo facility, maybe in a different region. And there is a distinct lack of unified management tools to cover that. The other thing that we see is data governance. I'm working with an organization, we're a customer of theirs at the moment, and half of their team are digital nomads. But when you think about people being able to want to work from anywhere, what about the implications of that in finance and banking? So I think for me, the critical components here is that we started in a world where we had to get everyone working remotely, but the policies, procedures, governance, and tools haven't matured to a point to actually really enable a remote working world to work the way that it needs to work. And this brings me on to assessing operational maturity. So when we talk about operational maturity in an organization, I'm going to refer specifically to ITIL. So when we talk about a maturity model in ITIL, and I'm sure everyone on this session has probably worked in a chaotic environment at some point in their careers. I certainly have. Where things are kind of handled ad hoc. You've got the IT manager patching cables and things like that, or the IT director patching cables. And then what happens is people move into a reactive world. And I think a lot of people were in that reactive world when COVID happened. It was a response to something that potentially brought them down a few levels of maturity by the level of complexity that was introduced. You've also got things like where they're starting to manage alerts and inventory, and things like availability. But when we get into a proactive world is where we start to analyze trends, predict problems, we start to bring in automation, and we start to mature configuration sets. So we start to look at this as a service delivery model. Now, some organizations manage to achieve a level of service where they deliver a service to the business. That service has SLAs. They also understand all of the costs. And understanding the costs of a VDI solution is incredibly important, and something that we've spent a lot of time working on with a lot of our customers to give transparency, because we want to be able to show organizations what the difference is between price and productivity, and to capture and analyze those events to be able to show an organization, well, actually, if you increase the resource of this user, you can potentially boost productivity across your organization. But detecting those events is one thing, and there's lots of tools out there that can detect those events, but there are very, very few tools who can actually act on those events. And I think that's quite a unique capability that we step into in this space. When we get to level 4, it's about linking business value to IT solutions. And I've got a couple of cool stories around here. So when I was at Citrix, I looked after the Red Bull Formula One team. And I sat down with their head of innovation and strategy, and he sits down and he says, how are you going to make the car go faster? And I said, well, I work for Citrix and I do VDI, and I've got no idea about anything to do with engines or cars. And that kind of put me in a bit of a predicament. But at the same time, there was some interesting points there, because with Red Bull, what they do is they run VDI at trackside, which enables them to get the data back to their Milton Keynes office faster, to be able to analyze it faster across a larger team than are allowed at the trackside right there. I did some work with a translation company when I was at Citrix, where they had heavy data transfers. And I think a lot of these soft values of VDI, as well as the security benefits of VDI, have been forgotten. And I think we really need to make sure that we focus in on where these solutions and Citrix solutions can drive value to an organization. And I think it's critical that when we talk about these solutions, we don't just talk about a spend or a cost or ease of management, but actually how can we change the business that we're working with. So when I talk about waste here, I'm talking specifically about in an organization where they might have areas that are inefficient. So a great example of waste in an organization is where, if someone, does everyone remember where people had small mailboxes, right? So you had a tiny mailbox, like 100 meg or 50 meg or something like that, and you'd be constantly asked to increase your mailbox size. And what happened was hard disk capacities got much bigger and much more available, but nobody actually went and upgraded everyone's mailbox sizes, even though disk space became so cheap. So what happened is you would see, and this is an email example, thousands and thousands of support requests for people to increase the size of their mailbox, which was basically just an admin task where policy hadn't caught up to the potential design decisions. And the cost of those support costs would have far outweighed the costs of just increasing the storage for all those users unilaterally across the board. So there's a great piece called Sense and Respond. And what Sense and Respond does is it allows you to categorize the different areas of a business or the different support calls in an organization, and what they come in to. Are they fixing something? Are they something where you can change it, or are they waste? Okay. Are they an opportunity, or do they deliver value or customer purpose to that organization? And that can be applied quite powerfully to IT operations and IT support. When we look at value, that is something that's defined by customer purpose, deliver value effectively to customers, i.e. your end users, and efficiently to the organization. The customer is asking for something new or to enhance the use of something they already have, maybe a new version of some software or something where they deliver value to the organization. An opportunity is something like someone calls up for a password reset, but you might be able to put something like a self-service password reset in to remove those tickets from your organization. So automate out some of those requests and some of those tickets. When we talk about failure, that's something like an act of God, all right? And when I say that, it's my laptop's exploded, or my printer's jammed, or something like that. Something that just happens, almost like a mean time between failure on a device, or someone tripped over the network cable, or the routers stopped working and needs a reboot. Those things that are kind of unavoidable. But institutional is generally a design-based waste. So as an example, imagine when you log onto your Citrix environment, it takes a long time to log on because your profile is in the wrong place, or maybe you're logging into the wrong data center in the wrong area, so therefore you always get slow support, or your apps aren't next to your data. Things where if the environment was designed better or designed right, you would be able to remove that. And these are some numbers. So I don't think these will surprise anyone, but this was an effort that I did a few years ago to manually classify the support tickets individually within an organization for a given month. So there's a couple of pieces here. Is one, on the left-hand side, we can see that 80% of the tickets that we saw coming in were down to waste, which is where users didn't have the right applications, or their profiles didn't perform properly, or maybe they had an issue that constantly occurred, like a temperamental issue, like licensing server wasn't stable, or maybe a storefront server was blipping up and down or something like that. all of these things that if they'd actually been monitored using NetScalers, and now NetScaler, I was about to say ADC, but we're back to NetScaler now. If they'd been monitored using that, we could have remediated or prevented the users from ever seeing that issue. And when we looked at that, we found 80% of the lost time from support could be corrected either through use of automation, or it could be corrected through self-service, or it could be corrected by adjusting designs. And normally when I present these numbers to people, people aren't surprised, right? These aren't, everyone kind of expects this, and you kind of deep down, you kind of know that this is what it really looks like. But what was interesting was when we looked over here, and we looked at the resolution code. So this big blue area over here was blank. This second blue area over here for the resolution code, this one was other. So of all of these issues that they were looking at, none of these actually showed up in the report. So not only were they wasting all of this time here, but you'll see that the two areas that they have here show that all of the stuff that was waste wasn't even being correctly categorized within their support, meaning that management literally had no visibility within that organization of what kind of waste was there. And that brings us on to our tools. So when we talk about our tools, we've been automating VDI solutions for about 15 years now. And this has culminated in a set of services and solutions that are designed to eliminate design-based waste, to enable automation and self-service to boost productivity, and to enable people to not only see things like digital experience management, but to be able to act on them in an automated fashion. And I think that's the really, really key point here, is that there's a million tools that will allow you to see that something is slow. There are very few tools out there, or as far as I'm aware, no tools for VDI that allow you to automatically remediate that for a user. So when I talk about Flex Desktop is a collection of tools. Generally, we have a few different offerings, which I'll get onto in a second, and that can be just software, or it can be a combination of software and services, or it can be a desktop as a service solution delivered in your data center, or as a fully hosted platform. It can run Citrix, traditional Citrix. It can run Citrix Cloud, and all of these different components, we support different environments. So the key point here is that if you have an on-premises environment, maybe a legacy farm, and then maybe you have another environment in cloud, or if you're from a large organization where your organization spans multiple Citrix Cloud tenants, we provide a single operational framework for all of your users to be able to view and manage the environment. So we have around 100 ServiceNow workflow automations, and that's our portal that we utilize. That's the basis of it. So if you utilize ServiceNow, we can integrate into your tenant. If you don't utilize ServiceNow, we can provide you access to the operations portal that we have built. As I said, we have about 100 microservices that work consistently across every platform out there. So if you have a platform on VMware running Citrix on premises on different versions of Citrix, and then you also have a Citrix Cloud tenant, or maybe two Citrix Cloud tenants, one in the US and one in EMEA, we can utilize one UI and one single next microservice to perform tasks across any of those environments through a single UI. And as far as I'm aware, this capability is fairly unique. We can also automate actions based on data that we take out of our Flex Analyzer tool, which I'll show a demo of shortly. The Flex Workspaces tool that we have unifies end user support and allows you to perform custom scripted actions across your organization. So the goal here is that any device, be it physical or virtual, on cloud, in a data center, can be supported through a single console. Things like profile resets and profile management actions can all be completed through that console, as well as custom actions. The goal is to have a single unified portal for all support actions to be taken by your first and second line teams. When we get into Flex Analyzer is our application lifecycle management and digital experience management tool. What it enables you to do is to see what applications are being used by what users, but also on what devices. So we can look at a user and see every time they use an application across both virtual and physical devices, and what applications they use and the performance requirements and metrics of those applications. We can also look at that from a device perspective and see where those applications are installed on a particular device. We can then dive into digital experience management. We can then poll users to find out what they think their digital experience is, and we can also pull information and capture events showing when that's slow. So for example, if a user was using Power BI to run a report, and he runs that report 2 or 3 times a day, and it maxes out his CPU for 10 minutes every time, well, we could workflow that into the ServiceNow automation to request an approval to increase the size of his VDI, potentially saving that user maybe 10 minutes a day, maybe 20 minutes a day, but at a cost of something like $10 or $20 per month. Now, this is allowing us to have a real world conversation about price versus productivity for organizations. And also to stop it being when people come and ask for more resources because I need a more powerful VDI, we can enable chargeback models with that, where we can say, well, actually, if you want more power, you can pay for it yourself. Or if you think it has that value, you can add that performance to that user. And this is incredibly powerful. We were talking about an example with a customer the other week, and we said, well, actually, if we found 10% of your users needed a bit more CPU and we could boost their productivity by, let's say, 10%, okay, we can do a global productivity increase of 1% across the entire organization at a very, very minimal cost. Now, we know things don't correlate quite that nicely, but when we're capturing events, and I'll show you what this looks like in a second, that show exactly how long somebody's being slowed down for, and then we can see those events over time and how many of those events there are, we can increase the resources and see the reduction. We can start to quantify how much resource is worth giving a user before there's a drop off and it doesn't affect the productivity to the same level anymore. Finally, we have Flex Monitoring, which is our capacity management, the monitoring of core services, and the proactive and automated maintenance of the platform. So we work in a few key pillars. So actually, I'm going to go to this one first. So if we talk about the way that the product fits together, okay, we have a standard edition, which I haven't shown on this slide, which is software only. It provides you access to our support portal and our Flex Analyzer tooling. When we go to the advanced solution, this is for customers who either have an existing platform or would like a new platform deployed, and they have their own compute. So let's say you have VMware hosts or you have Nutanix hosts in a data center, and you would like an environment either managed through our framework, or you would like it building using our automation tools, because we can automate the deployment of this as well, or you want to build or manage an environment on cloud. As part of that, we would deploy, we would monitor, we would deploy all of our tooling across it to give you an operational framework to manage that environment. We would also help with sizing. And the goal here is that essentially we provide you a framework for managing complex environments. So we would potentially build a service catalog around your organization saying, well, actually you have 2 areas in cloud, you have 2 data centers on premises, you have a small footprint somewhere else. We would create a catalog of different VDIs for all of those areas. Now, if you wanted a cloud consumption model but in your data center, we can include our enterprise edition. The advanced service is purchased as something like per user per month. Let's say, I don't know, $5 or euros per user per month. And the enterprise service is purchased as a VDI size. So we would provide a set of t-shirt sizes, maybe 4 cores, 8 gig of RAM, and a gig of GPU to enable people to use 4K monitors and native teams and things like that, at say a cost of, I don't know, I'm just throwing out numbers here, maybe 50 euros per user per month. And what we would do with that is you would come to us and say, we want 1,000 desktops at this size, maybe 500 desktops at this size. We would ship everything to your data center, we would build that environment, we would manage that environment, and then we would give you the tools to operate and support that environment. So the services that we build around the Citrix environments go up to the image. And then the unified tools, and we can do this as software as a service only, allow you to manage and operate that. The edge solution that we have is fully hosted desktop as a service. And we are broker agnostic. I know this is a Citrix event, but we also support all other major brokers and AVD as well, meaning that if you have a complex environment with multiple brokers, or maybe your organization is very acquisitive and has bought an organization that has Horizon and you're looking to move it to Citrix, we could utilize our tooling to allow you to manage both of those environments through a single framework while you migrate all the users within that organization across to the core Citrix environment that you utilize internally. So as a high level of what we do, we deploy, so we build a service catalog. As a recent example, we deployed an environment for a customer in 3 weeks, including hardware delivery times for around 5,000 users very recently. Our Flex Analyzer tooling enables you to provide laser-focused sizing so that we can look at the exact resource consumption of individual users, applications, or VDIs, and then also see what applications are being used where across both physical and virtual devices as a unified view. We have our operations pillar, which includes the monitoring, the management, change operations. So if you need a Citrix upgrade, you can do it through a ServiceNow workflow. You click next, 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 and your environment will be upgraded on the schedule that you set. Our automation provides all of our microservices, and I'm going to show a demo of this stuff as well for self-service workspaces. It allows us to devolve the sizing process and that cost per performance conversation closest to the end user, and to harness the natural growth of all users within an organization. The idea that, for example, if you have a finance department and everybody in finance gets 4 cores and 8 gig of RAM, what about the one guy who suddenly starts getting really good at reporting? Well, he might need some extra resources. Well, why can't his manager turn around and say, actually, I want to give him a more powerful machine? Why is this always an IT request, and why can't that be handled on a devolved level closest to that user and enable the organization to harness the growth and capabilities of their employees over time? And finally, for the lifecycle management, we have our digital experience management in Flex Analyzer, and we have our support operations management and capacity planning in Workspaces and the monitoring tools. So quite a lot of information about what we do, but what I wanted to show you next is I wanted to show you what this looks like when it all fits together. So I'm just going to pull up a couple of short videos just to show you, and then what I'm going to do is I'll show you the full solution running end to end just after that. So first of all, I just wanted to show you what this would look like if we fit all of this solution together into a single platform. So let me just share my screen again. So, okay. There we go. Sorry, it was just loading. Cool. So on here, we're going to go into and show what this looks like. So let me hop back to here. And on here, we can see, so what does this all look like? So if we want to size a workspace, we can go in and we can size that workspace. We can size that workspace based on the information that we have here. So we can go in and we can see what apps those users are using. We can look at the different app groups that people have. We can then also look at the individual resources of a group of applications or individual user. And we can actually see in terms of megacycles and gigs of RAM exactly what that application set would use for a given user as an average or a peak. So these tools enable us to get laser focused sizing for an organization. Now, let's say an organization has 3 or 4 different environments. Okay, so they have 3 or 4 different environments, and on those 3 or 4 different environments, sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble with the screen sharing here, sorry. On those 3 or 4 different environments, you might have an Azure environment, an on-premises environment, a Citrix Cloud, or multiple Citrix Cloud tenants. Well, in here, we can go in and provision a workspace, and we can actually provision a workspace on any one of those environments around the globe using a single integrated framework. And as I mentioned, we do support AVD, we do support Horizon and Citrix. A lot of the time, people end up with complex environments, not by choice, but through things like mergers and acquisitions. So our tools enable you to manage all of that as a single view. Once you've provisioned that workspace, you can go in and approve that individual workspace, and that will go in for automated provisioning. Once a workspace has been provisioned, it will automatically pop up in our support tooling, which means that you can then get into that device and you can perform remote operations on that device. We can then do things like capture alerts. So here it might be a bit difficult to read because it's quite small, but the CPU and RAM percentage has been more than 80% during the last hour. So what we can do here is we can actually have a look at this event, and we can see that actually we're at 100% CPU for over 10 minutes. So that's something that means the user's running slow. They've already got 4 cores. They've got 8 gig of RAM, I think that says there, and we can see that it's Power BI. Well, from here, we could actually go back in and approve a size increase, and this could be a line manager, or it could be on someone on IT support, or it could go to the department head for approval, an increase in that VDI's available resources to enable that user to be able to perform better in their day-to-day. We could then go back to those events and have a look at those events. If an organization has hot add, it would be automatic, but in this case, we're showing a pop-up saying they need to reboot. So the goal here, as I said, is this unified operational framework for managing VDI. It's about trying to come up with something that actually allows people to manage true hybrid cloud environments through a single UI. Has there been any questions so far? I couldn't see anything in the chat. Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear that. At the volume turn now. I can't hear Bart.
There is a question out there. I don't know why we can't hear Bart. Let me let him try one more time. Not work is the headset issue. I can ask him really quickly if while he works that out. It's it says for monitoring, can you out to the thin client? We have thin clients on-prem in 99 branches and in Soho locations.
So yes, it depends on the device and the endpoint, but yeah, we have agents available for Linux, Mac OS, and Windows as well. So the goal for us is to cover all endpoints under the unified framework. So yes. Cool. So operations framework. So our operations portal. So this is what it looks like. And if those of you familiar with ServiceNow, we'll see that this bit is built on ServiceNow. We have basic actions, so we have over 100 micro apps or microservices that are available. We can do things like the basics, like create AD accounts. We can do things like image management, so we can create snapshots from a template for people to be able to install applications on for that environment. But bear in mind, one of the important things here is this works across AVD, this works across VMware, this works across Citrix, it works across Citrix on-prem and cloud. It also works on Hyper-V, it also works on ZenCenter for the for those of you who use ZenCenter. I think I've only ever seen it in one production deployment. We can also pull out reports. So these are a few examples of the reports we can pull, like the number of active sessions or the most used applications or the number of connections, but across every single environment within your organization. We're having a lot of interest in these kind of features at the moment from customers who have multiple Citrix Cloud tenants, because any organization that has over 10,000 VDIs, because of the scaling limitations, ends up having to have multiple Citrix Cloud tenants. We also have all the session management tools. These can be given to your IT support teams, or these can be provided direct to your users. So you could actually allow your users to reset their profiles. From a support perspective, we can create cases for things that sit outside of that. But what I'd like to do is nip into workspace actions. So we can do things like, for example, if you wanted to reboot a workspace. Now, as I said, this could be on premises, this could be on cloud, this could be anywhere. In here, we've got two separate environments. In this environment, there's no devices in that one. There we go. We've got some multi-session boxes and we've got some non-persistent. So I can actually go and perform things like power management actions across multiple environments or groups of environments through this single UI. Now, this is really great when people have legacy farms and modern farms and cloud farms, and maybe some different brokers in their environment as well, basically for complex environments, but also if somebody wanted to create a workspace, we can create these workflows so that it's very simple for anyone in the business to do this. We can basically offload the entire provisioning, if we use the right naming conventions in the right places, to the teams. One second, I need a power adapter. 1 second. Sorry about that, guys. I just got a 3% battery warning that my Surface was about to die on me. We can then launch a workspace in maybe Azure West for our demo, or we might have multiple environments. So we can go and have a look at a separate environment. We can then deploy into different catalogs and deploy maybe 1, 3, 5, or however many VDAs there are in that environment through a single UI. Now, other things that are getting really interesting is with the introduction of things like MSIX, we're now also starting to step into things like application packaging and pushing into images. So actually we can start to, through use of automation, package applications into MSIX. Okay, so we lean on other vendors to do that packaging, but once we've got those packages, we can push those packages out to multiple images on multiple different environments through the use of our tools. So as I said, our goal here is to become a unified framework for operations, and this will be used by employees, line managers, and maybe support staffs, and everything is done through role-based access control. Now, stepping into the second part of our tooling, this is Flex Workspaces. So Flex Workspaces is designed for your first and second line teams to be able to support users and physical devices across any environment anywhere across the globe. So we can see my boss, Sebastian Pratt. We can see Carl Webster, the infamous. He does a lot of our documentation. We can see Guy Leach on there as well. We can also see different hypervisors. So we can see actually we've got Azure, we've got vSphere, we've got Hyper-V, we've got some physical devices, we've got a Zen server, and we've got AWS, all under one console. We also can see things like where we've got AVD, traditional Citrix, and Citrix Cloud. We can see things like the host pool capacity for different AVD pools as well. We can also do things like session compaction as well with FSLogix for the profiles, all within this one tool. So the goal here is if we think about someone where most users these days have a laptop, and they probably run some apps on the laptop and some apps on the VDI. Well, we can actually support every user's physical device here. So I can have a look at Albert here, our Chief Digital Officer. I can see that he's using quite a lot of CPU on his device at the moment, and we can dive into the performance of that device and have a look at that and see what's going on. We can see his user input delay and some of the core information. We can see a physical device that's been up for 6 days with 4 cores and 8 gig of RAM. We could also perform remote administration or remote assistance. We can do power actions from here, and we can also perform custom scripted actions for common tasks or common issues that user may experience, or that these could be written by second and third line teams for your first line teams. Now, what we can also do is we can also look at the virtual sessions. So we can see in here, if we just look at the virtual sessions, we can see some test users in here from Guy. But I can look at, for instance, here's Carl Webster's virtual session. So on here, we can see that he's running Citrix on premises on Hyper-V. We can see the farm and the pool in the catalog. But most importantly, regardless of what it is or where it is, we can support, manage custom actions and power actions and view all of the information around services and disks and all that kind of stuff, all through one single UI. We have some other features in here around alerting, so alert subscription, notification profiles. We can also do things like profile management tasks when we get into the level 2 area, where we can compact, reset, and back up profiles across any environment anywhere in the globe, so long as they're on FS Logix. We also have tools for things like host pool management for AVD, as well as power management policies for AVD. We also have server management tools in there as well for that, and we can start to look at some of these machines and who's using them and what's going on with those machines, and also look at some of the power management savings that we're seeing on these as well. So we can see that actually we can do some disk reductions here to optimize that cost. We can also have a look at some of the power management activity and see how we are saving cash and deprovisioning those machines over time. Now, this is aimed at the support teams, as was mentioned. The final tool that we've got is lifecycle management, and this is really based around application lifecycle management. It's based on looking at what apps users are using and how they're using those applications. And also looking at when people are using those apps, what the performance profiles are, but most importantly is the user experience monitoring. So we can look at devices, so we can see the devices and the different applications that are installed on those devices. So I can have a look at this virtual machine and we can see what apps are actually being used on it. We can also see historical sessions and problems that might exist with that device, and that's Killian, our CTO, who's on that device. But we can also look at users. So on here, instead of just looking from a device view, because one thing that we do know is people use both physical and virtual devices, I can go into here, I can find Killian here, and I can, instead of just seeing the apps that he's using on his Citrix session, I should be able to see the apps that he uses. I think he's just using Citrix on there. Let me find a better example. There we go. So I can see the apps that are being used across different devices by that user. So in here, we can see that he's using two or three different machines, and each of those machines he uses different applications. We can also see the sessions that he's using on those devices as well. As I said, we have agents for Linux, Mac, and Windows as well. And then when we dive into the applications, we've got the standard stuff that you would expect for application lifecycle management, like application catalogs, where we can see all of the different apps that are there. We set the filters on there and see those. If we dive into an individual application, just take a second to load on that one. We can then see information, fill out information like product owners, department owners. We can see all the versions that are in use, and we can see who's using that application from a session perspective. And that's both across physical and virtual. We can then create our own user-defined groups or system-managed groups of applications, where we can see these are the kind of departmental apps that most people are using across the organization. We can see which users are consuming those apps. We can then go a little bit deeper into there and say, well, actually, what apps are being used over time? So when you're trying to move someone to a virtual desktop or see what apps they're using, there's a lot of tools that will tell you what's installed, but there's not many tools out there that will show you exactly when those applications are being used and potentially the average performance statistics. So we can see that the Microsoft Edge, as an example, maxes out, or Chrome maxes out at around 2 gigahertz of CPU. Okay, and that's averaged across the users. We can also see that Outlook is using an extremely large amount of RAM across our environment on average. We can then look at things like application versions and how many versions of apps are being used in the environment. So we can see we've got 4 versions of Teams in our environment at the moment. But one of my favorite views here is this app resources. And I think this view is incredibly powerful because it enables us to look at, for instance, an individual user So I should have Danny on here somewhere. Let's see if I can find Danny's. There he is. Let's grab Danny, and we'll get rid of that. So we can look at Danny's usage over time, and we can see what apps he's using in the other views, but then we can tie in and see exactly how much of the performance of his device that is he using on a day-to-day basis. There we go. So we can see that over the day, this device that he's utilizing is basically idle, which probably means his VDI is overpowered because he's probably just using it for Outlook or something like that. We could also look at the performance profile of an individual application within the organization or an application group within the organization. So we could pick out, for instance, departmental apps and see the average utilization for those apps across all of those users. That'll give us a really, really good indication of exactly how much of the performance of those VDIs are being used. But also, if you created a group that include the apps for a new user, you could see exactly what those applications would need, or what that user's VDI size would need to be. Finally, we get onto digital experience management, where we can look at things like creating polls for users, but then we can also have a look in here at things like the user experience. So we capture the UXI and the UXI tendency. And over time, we can have a look at the tendency of an individual user's UI, and we can have a look at the device reliability indicator. So we can see here that Killian has a very, very low device reliability, as does Sebastian. Sebastian's our CEO. And if we have a look on here, we can see that he is regularly hitting 80% of the CPU on his device. So we'll have a quick look at this device, and we can see that for it's hitting 100% CPU usage for about 5 minutes. And it's some system processes that are consuming large quantities of RAM and CPU across his device. So that might be something that we could route automatically using ServiceNow direct to a support team. But imagine if that was somebody receiving 10 events a day that they were maxing out their CPU and RAM because of something like Excel or Power BI or a power user tool. Well, if organizations are seeing that, we could then workflow that into ServiceNow and resize that user's VDI on the fly to be able to make them more productive on their day-to-day. We can see that this user here is hitting 83% of his RAM pretty much the whole day. Okay, over time. So we know that this user probably needs some more RAM. And that is kind of the final overview of our tools. So in summary, thanks everyone for joining and taking the time, but we have support portals. We can do deployment. We can manage greenfield or brownfield. We can actually be significantly cheaper than something like Azure or AWS as a hosted desktop platform. And our unified management tools allow you to manage everything across your organization through a single UI. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us and pass back to Stephanie and Bart. I don't know if we've got any more questions or anything like that, or if that's a wrap.
Yeah, there's a few questions. One is about pricing. Is it per user or per agent, or how is it structured?
Yeah, so we price per user per month, and we're pretty simple as a vendor. The more users that you purchase, the more the price goes down, basically. And that's for the advanced edition. Now, if you purchase our kind of more desktop as a service solutions, where we provide a VDA to you, so we do everything up to the image and then you just add your apps to the image, we would charge based on something like 4 cores, 8 gig of RAM. As an example, something like 4 cores, 8 gig of RAM, I don't know if I've got something up in front of me, could be somewhere around 40 euros per user per month with 50 gig of profile storage, as an example, something in that kind of region, dependent on the number of users that you've got. So, I mean, if you compare that to Azure, a similar size on Azure is about $78. Downside with us is we're a longer term contract, right? We don't provide you that instant scalability. If you need more than 20% scalability, it takes time. Okay, so I often people think I'm kind of cloud negative. I'm cloud where cloud fits. Our platform is cheaper, but if you need 1,000 desktops tomorrow, you're going to have a 2 to 4 week lead time on that. All right, we don't have that level of flexibility. Also, the sizes that we provide are the sizes that we provide. So you need to know that that's what you're going to be using consistently for the next year, or at least a year. So yeah, sorry to long-winded answer that one, but yeah, essentially per user per month or per VDA.
Yeah, and then there's quite a few technical questions. For example, can you do scripted actions against a group of sessions, VDI servers? Not a single one, but
yeah, and we can also trigger them off the back of alerts and events as well. So you could trigger a custom action. Now, one of the really powerful things with the custom actions from our side is that we can run those custom actions across all environments. Doesn't matter if it's VMware on-prem with Citrix on-prem, AVD with Citrix Cloud. The scripted actions run across every single platform because it's a device that's inside. It's an agent that's inside the VDA.
okay. I assume there's also a possibility to schedule reports and not just on the fly, but schedule.
Yeah, of course. So with the monitoring, we have a monitoring front end dashboard. And all of our customers receive a customer manager as well. So we work with organizations to schedule reports, to schedule alerts, to work out what they need, plan things like capacity management and things like that for their different platforms as well. So yes, of course. Just one other piece on reporting is that everything that we do is API first. So our services are built out on Azure IoT Hub, ServiceNow, Cosmo DB, Azure SQL, those kind of tools, which means that if there's any views in our software that you don't like or something that you want to build yourself or you want to integrate it with internal services, maybe something like a CVE database or an application library database that you have internally, all of that can be done quite easily using API integrations into Power BI, Tableau, pick your poison when it comes to data tools.
Yeah, that's kind of fits to the next question. It is, can app resources be viewed by location, or does it require a user group? So basically, if it's not there, you said you can build it yourself.
Yeah, so if there is something that's not there at the moment, now global filters are very short-term roadmap. So I don't normally like talking about features that are not released yet. But we have the users and the groups, but we are adding in global filters, and it's specifically there to add M&A use case, where a customer might want to browse through all of the data, but for a specific IP range or domain, as an example, or a particular farm as well, or environment, to be able to break that down further. That should be released very shortly. If anyone was talking to us now, it would be released by the time it was purchased anyway. It's very, very, very close.
Okay. And the final question, I think, is can you share information on your partnership with Kyndryl? Do you support CVET workloads in IBM Cloud?
Yeah, so we work very closely with Kyndryl. We are a delivery partner with Kyndryl. We deliver a lot of VDI projects with them as part of the alliance. And we do have, I believe we have some current installations with Kyndryl on top of IBM Cloud as well at the moment. I can't name names, unfortunately. But yes, we can support on top of IBM Cloud. The general one that we would utilize for that would be sort of IBM Cloud running VMware with machines on top of that. Cool. If you want any information or any more detailed information on that, drop me an email. I'm assuming we can share my details afterwards, or you can track me down on LinkedIn, Adam Cooperman. Just drop me a message, and I'm more than happy to have a conversation with anyone who's got any further questions about our product portfolio.
Yeah, I can absolutely do that. I can include that in the follow-up email tomorrow.
Brilliant.
All right, well, thank you so much. Thanks, Adam, for being here today. Appreciate you spending the time. No,
that's awesome, and thank you so much for having us and allowing us to present our product portfolio out to the awesome Citrix user group community. It's great.
And thank you, Bart. It was great to have you on today too. Appreciate it. All right, some of you may have opted in for a chance to win an Amazon gift card. So be on the lookout for an email from me, or keep your eye at my CUGC on Twitter. I'll announce the winner there. I'm going to pull the report after this, and I'll randomly select a winner and just let you know who that is. So fingers crossed, it might be you. All right, I want to thank everyone for being here today, and I hope to see you again on another CUGC webinar or at a meeting or in an Excel event again soon. Hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you. Bye.
See you later, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.